You know, I've spent a lifetime on stage, in the studio, and on the road, singing songs about heartbreak, hope, faith, and family. Night after night, I stood under the bright lights, and you've given me the honor of sharing my story with you. And as seasons change, and platforms do too, we've gone from vinyl to cassettes, from CDs to streaming. The stories of the road and the songs still matter, and the voices of the next generation, well, they've got fire, they've got heart, and they've got something the world needs to hear. So today we're passing the mantle and the mic and our experiences from one generation to the next. The conversation continues.
Rocking and reeling to the rhythm of the country sounds. He's got his 18-wheeler with spindle to the middle, and he's headed for the middle, and a bottle in the middle of a little old country road I'm traveling on.
And we found out that we've got people that showed up from Mexico to Montana, and we've got comments on social media and YouTube from all over the world. So that's our goal, is we want to put Texas music. You know, you are a Texas music ambassador, and I mean officially you are. I mean unofficially you've been an ambassador for some time, but you know, it's all been made official now. When you were which governor was it that first gave you that appointment?
Governor White, Mark White. Back in that was what? Yeah, in the early '80s. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, we gave a little bit of a background about why Marble Falls has become such a significant place in Texas music history, and therefore American history. And I started with the discussion about a gentleman named Floyd Tillman.
Yes.
And Floyd lived in the 70s, 80s, and 90s here, and he lived behind the football stadium close to where the HEB is, and he would quietly go into the Bluebonnet Cafe and have some eggs and bacon, and he'd always take a to-go box for his wife because she had become a recluse, if you might remember. But I'm curious, and this, I'm going to make sure that Kevin is ready for me for this one. I'm curious because this is one of the important questions that I wanted to ask you. Did you ever have the opportunity to meet Floyd Tillman?
I did. He performed at several of Willie Nelson's picnics, and I actually have some photographs that I took of him backstage at the bicentennial. That's been 1976 at Gonzales, Texas, on July the 4th. I got some pictures of him. So, but you know, never had a chance to sit down and visit with him or anything. But I do have one story that maybe someone here or someone somewhere can verify. I grew up in Brownfield, Texas, and it's out there on the Great South Plains, southwest of Lubbock, and it's on the direct line from Post, Texas to Roswell, New Mexico. I think Highway 385. And I was driving over there one day toward Post. I don't know where I was headed, but I picked up a hitchhiker, and the fella told me a story about, said he remembered that Floyd Tillman was a disc jockey at a radio station in Post, Texas when he was a young man. So I don't know if anybody can confirm that, but that's what this fellow told me. So anyway, he's one of the pioneers
that's
of country music.
Absolutely amazing. I had a few questions that some of my friends have helped me put together, including Braden Barnhill, who is from Marble Falls, and is somebody that I want you to meet. Braden just got signed to Big Machine Records. And,
good.
And so I know that you have said in previous interviews that you've done that you are a songwriter when the moment strikes, and that you are also a publisher. You learned to be a publisher. Who did you learn that from, and what has that led to?
Well, I learned that from Michael Martin Murphy. When he first came to town, that would have been 1972. I went to see him do a show, and I wrote, there's more to the story that you can read about in my book. So, but I met him there, and we moved into a place over on North Lamar. And the stories around that, it's right down the road from where old Kenneth Threadgill's station and Threadgill's restaurant was on North Lamar.
Yes.
And there's no stone house there, and we moved in there together, and he moved his things out from California.
You and Murphy?
Yeah. And so he moved his wife and family out from California, and of course, he was just, he's the type of guy so disciplined and creative that he would sometimes, before he had his first cup of coffee, he would have written 3 or 4 songs already before he came out of his bedroom. Just so incredibly prolific. And so I'd never been around anyone like that. And he had had a great deal of experience in California, working for, writing songs for a publishing company. And so he knew the business. And one morning in that house there, he said, come back here, I want to show you something. And he opened up a file cabinet, a metal file cabinet, and pulled out a bunch of folders out of it. And he said, you know what this is? I said, no. I said, this is a BMI royalty statement. Now, for those of you who are unaware, BMI is what they call a
PRO, Performing
Performance Rights Organization. They and ASCAP and CSAC, and they collect royalties for public performances and distribute them to the publishers and writers. And so he said, you see this? And he said, Gary P., he said, one of these days you're going to be getting stacks of these papers this thick. And it's funny how someone can with just a single sentence plant a seed in your head and maybe give you an idea that you hadn't thought about before. That's happened to me on several occasions, but this is the one. So I became aware of what publishing was. So we later on we recorded a song on that Cosmic Cowboy record, which is one of the first so-called Cosmic Cowboy records to come out of Austin. And we had co-written the song together, and at the when we got through, and we got home, and we were kind of wrapping up the paperwork and all that. You know, well, I asked him. I said, well, you know, because publishing is half of it is publishing rights, and 50% of it is songwriter rights. So naturally understood, I share in 50% of the songwriting rights, but I was interested in the publishing rights too, because he had made me aware of it. I said, well, what about splitting the publishing? He said, you don't have a publishing company. I'm like, oh. Well, what do you have to do to get a publishing company? I'll just call up BMI and sign a paper, you know, and it's a done deal. So after that, I started the publishing company. So, and then later on, working with Jerry Jeff, I was able to, he recorded some of my stuff, and also I was able to, when I started promoting other songwriters. So that's how I got started in the publishing business. I became, I remember one time we were in the studio doing a song with Jerry Jeff, and I said, I found a song that said, Jerry Jeff, that'd be a great song for the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. He went, it's not your job to find songs for the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. And if I'd have been quick of mind, I would say, it's not your job, tell me what my job is. Yeah.
Well, speaking of those days with Jerry Jeff, I'm sure there are people that have questions about the Los Gonzos. I was looking at the original members because I know that there's quite a few members that came in and out, but you were one of the original ones. And I realized that you played bass and keyboard. Now with the Gonzos, Livingston also played bass, right?
Right. I kind of got. I was a bass player when he hired me, because Bob had left to go play with Three Faces West, which is Riley Hubbard's band, and that's where Michael McGeary came in too, because he was scheduled to be in that band, but somehow I don't know what happened, but it didn't last long, and then Bob came back and wanted his job back. He said, and I write about this in my book too. So I was disappointed, because being a bass player, you have a lot of influence on how the band sounds, because you can be more or less in control of the tempo, and also the dynamics, how loud it is. Sometimes a lot of bass players nowadays, they just play the same loudness no matter what it is, And I used to use it. It's that it's too loud and they can't hear the voice. So I would just pull back on the bass and start playing it softer and create this soft space. And then the rest of the band would, because they'd be sticking out at this point, Yeah. So they would draw back as well. Would create that space, a little quiet space for a songwriter to express himself, without having to compete with bass and drums.
Well, I know that tempo is also an important thing to you, because I've known several drummers that played with you, and you were adamant that they had to be in the pocket. Yeah. And
well, I was adamant in suggesting that they be in the field. I couldn't guarantee that they would always be there.
Yeah, and at that time, one of the founding members was a guy named Donnie Dolan.
Yeah.
And was he that kind of drummer that you could trust?
Absolutely. You go back and listen to those Los Gonzo Band records, you look for a bump or a flaw, and there's not one. It's just straight on. It's kind of like, what was it Charlie Watts was the drummer for the Rolling Stones? You don't just sit there and keep time. He'd do plenty of fills and everything, but he was always on time. Well,
I bring this up is, like I said, everybody was always interested in that, in you being part of that movement there when I guess Jerry Jeff and Willie, and you were playing some bass with Willie too, right? And with
I did for a week.
Okay.
He needed a bass player, and when he first came to town, Eddie Wilson organized a tour that was headlined. Actually, Michael Murphy and Willie opened. And it was all part of that Armadillo World Headquarters Lone Star Beer promotion. They claimed they sold more beer in Texas than anybody but the Astrodome. And so they made a big, and Jim Franklin, the famous Armadillo artist, they brought him in, brought us in. And so that was Eddie Wilson's first attempt at promote the Armadillo World Headquarters, Lone Star Beer, and then use Michael and Willie as the musical attractions. So Willie, we started the tour to Abilene, Lubbock, Amarillo, I believe, and Wichita Falls, and then came back and did a couple of nights at the Armadillo World Headquarters. So
those were some of my favorite memories growing up here in Marble Falls, was going to the Armadillo World Headquarters. I had a buddy of mine, his folks had the minnow shop right there on 1431, going toward your ranch out here. He lives, I'm not going to tell you where, but he lives somewhere in our vicinity, and he would pass this minnow shop. And my buddy John Spar, his dad had that minnow shop. And this was back in those days where they didn't check things quite as regularly as they probably should have.
Like
IDs, yes. And so I was 17, and he said, come on, we're going to go to Armadillo World Headquarters, and we're going to go hear Asleep at the Wheel. We're going to go hear Commander Cody. And I got introduced to so much of that great music at that time, including Jerry and Michael and Willie and you. So... Hey, I've got a question from my buddy Mike Blakely. Let me see if Mike Blakely's in the house back there, and Mike said he wanted to ask me, and I'm going to quote him exactly: how big of a how big of a career changer was London Homesick Blues, especially considering that it was the theme song for Austin City Limits for so many years?
Well, not as big as you might think. It was, of course, it was a theme song for Austin City Limits, and the most productive part of that was the early days of Viva Terlingua, the Jerry Jeff record, when it did sell quite well and made some pretty good money, but. As far, I could always hang my hat on it, but as far as it being rewarding financially, it wasn't. Because PBS, you can have, you get 30,000 airplays on public television, just little snippets, most of them, but the rate is like 0.003. So, out of 300,000 plays, you might get $15 or something like that. So it wasn't
kind of like Spotify now. Huh?
It wasn't. It wasn't, and of course, PBS is a focused audience, a small. It's not a general nationwide audience. So it did give me something. Of course, everybody loved the song, and every time I did it, that got me a lot of really great response. But actually, the record had Jerry Jeff Walker's name on it. He let me sing on his record, but it was his record. And it took about 25 years for people to figure out that it was me actually singing the song and not Jerry Jeff Walker. So basically, he got the bulk of the credit for that song. But I was glad to have it, no doubt.
Sure.
It was an opportunity for me. It's just kind of little bitty, tiny little Gary P. Nunn light shining up out there, out of the shadows of Jerry Jeff.
You credit Ruth, your wife, as persuading you to move back to Texas. And I saw that in an interview you had done with somebody in San Antonio. So I can imagine the conversation y'all had in Oklahoma. It's like but how did y'all wind up in Marble Falls?
Well, Ruth decided that she said, our son was graduating from high school up there in Oklahoma, and came home one day, and she said, look, when this boy graduates from high school and goes to college in Texas, she said, you can stay here on this ranch if you want to, but I'm not going to be here. So I said, okay. And she made another comment that was kind of pertained to Oklahoma, but I won't reveal it here because I still have a lot of kin folks in Oklahoma that I love.
Well, you and Mike Blakely have the University of Texas in common. You went there to study pharmacy, and he was there in what, journalism? Yeah. And so what a big conversion? I mean, suddenly you think you're going there, you're doing the right thing, your family's excited because you're at this major university and you're at one of the leading pharmaceutical universities in all of the world, and then you decide you become a musician. How did they take that? I mean,
well, they were disappointed. Really, my mother always said, even after I became a so-called professional musician and had been in the business for years and years, I'd go visit her and she'd say, and making good money, by the way, she'd say, Gary, I wish you'd go back to school and get your degree. That was the thing. They were school teachers. As long as I had a degree, didn't matter what. They'd been perfectly happy if I had been a school teacher. And I almost was, but I couldn't take that either. It was a school after about 5 years of chemistry and physics and organic chemistry and microbiology and all these really, really difficult courses that I had taken. I decided to drop out of the pharmacy school, and my counselor over there, he said, with all the hours that you have, you're qualified to teach math, biology, chemistry, physics, and botany. And so I said, I'll get a teaching degree. So I went and entered the School of Education. Now here I am, I'm about, 23 years old, and I'd been in school 5 years going to these chemistry labs and all these really difficult courses and everything. And they put me in a class with 18-year-old high school graduates that were going to be school teacher women, 18-year-old women. And really this course subject matter, in my mind, by what I had been through already, it was like going back to kindergarten. I went, I don't know if I can do 2 semesters of this. So, but anyway, I pulled I pulled out of that as well.
Well.
So, anyway, here I am.
I think it went. Do y'all think it went well for him?
Well, thank you. I always said, I'm gonna get a job someday.
Braden Barnhill, I mentioned him earlier. He had a great question, and before I ask you the question, I'm going to tell you in 2 or 3 sentences my experience answering this question. He wanted to know about a funny incident on the road, and so I got to thinking about the time we opened for Josh Turner in Wichita at the big festival there in Wichita Falls, Texas. And that next day we had to drive through Oklahoma to get to Wichita to play the next show. Good routing, right? And so we got a call somewhere. We were in the middle of Oklahoma, and they said, their road manager for Josh Turner said, "Did y'all take something that didn't belong to you?" And we were all, "No, we would never do that. We're an honest group of musicians. We make a living. We don't want to taint our reputations." And so they took that, and then we drove about another hour. I forget which town we were in Oklahoma. That's between Wichita Falls and Wichita, Kansas. But they called again. They said, "You absolutely, or you could be mistaken. Could you please double check?" And so Rodney Smith, our road manager at the time, he said, "Well, there were a bunch of volunteers, local volunteers that were helping load stuff in. Maybe they loaded something in that didn't belong." So we pulled over and we got our flashlights out and we were taking everything out, and there was a fiddle case in there. And a fiddle case. A fiddle case. And Rodney opened it up. There were no fiddles in there, but there were 2 bows. It turns out they were heirloom bows that cost, sometimes the bows cost more than the fiddles.
Right.
And so Mike and I had written a song together, Blakely, and it called "The Man Who Holds the Bow." So we were driving a few miles down the road. We were embarrassed to call back and say, yeah, we had that. And Joel Guzman, I don't know if you ever met Joel, the accordion player.
Yeah.
Joel, from the very front, while everybody's trying to go to sleep, he says, "We're the band who stole the bow." Instead of, the song's called "The Man Who Holds the Bow."
Okay.
So we laughed so hard. We could not stop laughing. It was one of those kind of laughs, because, you know, at this point, there's all that tension. Right. So my question to you is, have you had any incident like that on the road that just absolutely drove you into laughter that you could not stop? One of those kind of moments.
No, because it was usually my stuff that was getting stolen.
Well, I'll tell Braden that now, obviously, there's some embarrassing things you don't want to share, you know, about what Bob Livingston did backstage or something, you know. But so we can drop that. I'll tell Braden that I respect your answer, and we'll leave it there. Here's what we're doing here. We're going to do after we get done here with our podcast, and we thought we would keep it fairly short, because most people don't want to watch a 90-minute podcast, and I don't want to take up 90 minutes of your time retelling stories that these folks can get in your book. But I am curious, is there anybody that you've ever come across in your travels where you were starstruck, where you thought, wow, I'm so excited to meet this person?
Yeah, well, I guess one time when I lived in California, we played in a band as a club that we played. We were in a rock band. We do cover songs, and we played like 6 nights a week for 6 weeks in one place, and then moved to another. There's one club called the Factory, and the Factory was a favorite hangout for TV stars like Bill Cosby, David Jansen, and what was that fellow? He's an English guy that married into the Kennedy family. He's an actor. But anyway, but Paul Newman was the chairman of the board of this club, and so on what was it? I don't know. It was New Year's Eve or some special occasion. He actually walked into the room. I never got a chance to meet him, but the room was dimly lit, sort of like it is in here. And, you know, from 50, 60 feet away, I saw him walk across the room. Those blue eyes just kind of gleamed. And so I guess that's as close as I've been to a big star like that. I really was starstruck because, you know, those guys that I mentioned earlier, like Bill Cosby and David Jansen. Who is that basketball player? Like, he's the first 7-footer that played for the...
Jabbar?
No, before him. Yeah, Wilt Chamberlain. I actually played pool with Wilt Chamberlain.
Now that...
No. You know, obviously, he didn't need a crutch to reach across the table. He could lean over and touch the other side. He was so big. But anyway, but we'd sit around the breaks, and, you know, the Smothers Brothers, too, were regulars there. And they actually hired us to do some shows for them, private shows.
That's amazing.
So, but I don't know. Willie Nelson, about biggest star I've ever.
That is incredible. You remember B.B. Morris
Yeah.
I played bass. He's gone with me to Europe 14 times, and so he has gotten me into some of the events with Willie over the years. And I remember getting to hear Willie record it. He said, "I want you to come in here and just absorb. Don't say anything, but Willie's going to be tracking." And I told him, "You're coming," and he was recording Vincent at that time, that song by Don McLean. And I don't know if he never released it as a single or anything, but it's got to be out there somewhere, Willie's version of Vincent. I was there while he was cutting it, and I think BB had played bass. But a lot of those musicians, when they were off the road with Willie, and some of them were not regular part of the entourage, but they would record with him. There was a guy named Bucky Meadows. I don't know. You remember Bucky? Bucky was a child prodigy that played with Asleep at the Wheel. Before Asleep at the Wheel, there was Bob Wills in Texas Playboys. He played with Bob Wills, and he was an amazing piano player that could play anything. And a lot of those guys would come off the road, and when they weren't working with Willie, they would play with local bands. And there was a guy named David Zettner. I don't know if you remember David Zettner.
David Zettner, a steel player?
Zettner, a steel player, yes.
Right.
Yeah, an amazing steel player and bass player. I think he was Willie's bass player before B. Spears. David went to Vietnam. I'm just wondering if you had any interaction with those guys in those early days. And
our paths always, they were in one orbit and we were in another.
Yeah.
It was, unless I was out at Willie's cut and putt Pernellis golf course.
Did you play some golf there?
I did. I couldn't hit the ball worth the darn. That's a tough course, So.
Do you remember any of those rules on the golf course?
Oh, I remember one, whatever Willie shoots is par. That's
I remember one of those rules, no more than 1 foot wedge per hole.
Yeah.
Where you kick it out from behind, no more than 1 foot wedge per hole. But hey, before I let you go, I want to ask you about something that happened that's exciting. You said your manager told me that Chris Stapleton had recorded one of your tunes. Can you tell them a little bit about that tune and how that tune got started? Because I know that you've had some exciting things that resulted from your travels to Europe. You wrote London Homesick Blues while you were in Great Britain. You met a beautiful Swiss lady while you were traveling there as well. And so if you have any other stories about how Europe has influenced your life, I'm interested. But I'm particularly interested in that one song, though, that I think your sister helped you inspire.
Well, it's my girlfriend's sister.
Oh, okay.
It was my girlfriend's sister.
Okay.
Yeah, her name is Donna Farrar. She was married then, Donna Sissel. But she's gone back to using her maiden name. We were in that place I mentioned earlier, North Lamar, and I ended up living there about 10 years because rent was $150 a month, and Michael Murphy, when we moved in there, promised he'd never go up on the rent. So that was the best deal in town. So I called it my home for runaway fathers. But regarding that song, she just walked in the house because she had a bunch of sisters, and they were a big family group, and they were always hanging out together and showing up at our place. And so Donna walked in. She said, "I had the greatest idea for a country and western song." I said, "Okay, let me hear it." She said, "The last thing I needed, the first thing this morning, was to have you walk out on me." And I went, "The last thing I needed, first thing this morning, is to have you walk out on me." I said, "That's great." I said, "Go home and write it and bring it back." And and bring it back to me, and I'll, we'll go from there. She went and wrote the first verse, which is all intact for her, and then I thought that she kind of went astray because I could see myself in the second verse, from my own experiences. So I stepped in and wrote the second verse and the bridge, and it all just fell together very naturally. I just looked at the words and sang the melody, because that's the way I always have written songs. I'll write the words, and then I'll look at the words and sing something, and whatever it is what it is. Whatever comes out.
I spoke with your manager, Dee, and he said you might be willing to play a little bit of it if I had a guitar that was in tune. And I think it's in tune. And if you're willing to do that, I wouldn't have asked if I hadn't cleared this TV, but
Wow, what a guitar.
I just got that thing from my former drummer's wife's new husband. It's a true story.
You figured it out. I broke a fingernail and I don't have a pick, so it's all right. I don't need one. Postman delivered, has to build notice. Alarm clock rang 2 hours late. The garbage man left off, trash on the sidewalk. The hinges fell off of the gate. This morning at breakfast, spilled all my coffee. Open a door on my knee. The last thing I needed, first thing this morning, was to have you walk out on me. Last night you came home late, and I knew that you'd been drinking. By that old mellow look on your face, I thought it doesn't matter, it's the holiday season, and you feel such a big empty space. I laid down beside you, I wanted your loving. Your love makes my life complete. The last thing I needed, first thing this morning, was to have you walk by on me. Excuse me for looking like my world just ended. Excuse me for looking like I lost my best friend. Excuse me for living, being forgiven. Go on if you want to be free. The last thing I needed, first thing this morning, was to have
Oh, give it up for Gary P. Nunn. Thank you, Gary, for doing this. Thank y'all for being here. Appreciate you much.
Thank you.